Hello and welcome to our series of debates. Today is Fitchburg City Councilor at Large. We have 10 candidates and only 90 minutes, so we are going to get right to it. Road conditions continue to be a thorn in the side of city voters. The state has shown no willingness to increase Chapter 90 funds. As a way to create a new revenue stream for roads, would you vote for a property tax increase to put on the ballot via debt exclusion, which would target homeowners, or a special fee tied to cars registered in the city, as Councilor Boschman has proposed, which would apply to all who drive in the city? And if you would not vote for either of these revenue streams, please tell us what creative ideas you do have to either increase funding or specifically what cuts you would make elsewhere in the budget to help improve road conditions. Derek Strasdas.
Thank you for this question. It's no secret that we live in a city with very difficult and varying terrain. It's also no secret that we live in a state, or secret that the state has not increased our Chapter 90 funds in years. This very question has been reworded and asked at every single debate. For the past decade, we cannot continue to shrug our shoulders and make excuses. We need to further stimulate the local economy to see additional funds for the roads. To do that, we need to create a more straightforward system to get new businesses open with less headaches. If we're going to get the roads fixed, we need to stop passing the buck. Good business people don't look for excuses, they look for solutions. We need to elect energetic, fresh faces of varying backgrounds to come up with new solutions to old problems. As a businessman in the city, my family has faced many hardships over the years. If we simply stood back, made excuses, and passed the buck every time, we were put in a tough position. We would have been out of business a long time ago. The solution to this problem lies in streamlining the permitting process to open up opportunities for new commercial and residential endeavors in hopes to expand tax revenue and forward these additional funds toward our difficult infrastructure maintenance. Thank you.
Miranda Tozier Robbins.
Yes, hi, thank you, and thank you for this opportunity, FATV, constituents, and everybody else that's watching. I vote no to obviously both of the bills. What we should do is stop spending, bring in new revenue. These are things that I've been promoting for the past, 2 elections. We can bring in revenue via concerts or other festivals, cultural fairs, games, tournaments. We can ask our state rep to start pushing some of those earmarks towards the roads. He just recently gave, I want to say, the Conservation Commission another $25K on top of, 20 plus K that he's given to the FPD. So our state rep can maybe give our roads some of those earmarks and just, stop spending, altogether. Other places, stop taking in grants that we don't need for projects nobody wants. For our roads. Next.
Councilor Anthony Zarella.
Thank you very much. There's no magic bullet for the roads. If there were, it would have been fired by councils 10, 15, 20 years ago. That doesn't mean we shrug our shoulders. Certainly, I agree. We can't just shrug our shoulders and say, we can't do it, it's on the state, we're not going to do anything. But at the same time, there isn't anything quick and simple and, well, like I said, no magic bullet. No one is going to come into this office or the mayor's office and have the roads in better shape by the end of their term. It's just not possible. We have 200 miles of road in the city, $1 million to pave 1 mile. Even if we cut the city budget to the bone to pave roads, we'd eke out another couple miles. What we can do, I agree strongly, we need to grow the economy because that is how we get new revenue. We're not going to just dream up a new revenue stream, but as we bring in more business, more investment, it will grow. We also need to do as much as we can to make the roads that we currently have last as long as possible. And I know the DPW is working on some new techniques for that. I know Councilor, the once and future Councilor, Beth Walsh, has an idea that I'm not going to steal her thunder on for a more incremental improvement. But that's how we're going to do it, incrementally. It's going to have to be a little improvement here, a little improvement there, and eventually we'll get there. Thank you.
Councilor Amy Green.
Yes, thank you. So for the 10 years that I've sat on council, this continues to be a hot button debate. It's, you know, what every constituent and resident wants to hear, that we all have a magic bullet. We all have some magic fairy dust that we're going to sprinkle on the roads one day and wake up and they're all going to be better. Not the fact at all, as we just heard 2 weeks ago from the assessor's report, that out of the majority of our taxes that are collected from property tax, out of a $4,000 property tax bill a year, $147 is allocated from your bill directly to the DPW. DPW is not only roads, but it's also bridges and dams. All of that is in need of attention. So you can't address one without addressing the other. I would not be for increasing property tax or a debt exclusion override. That just kicks the can further down the road because, as we know, when one road is repaired, it takes maintenance to maintain it. What I would love to see is a new technology with how we go about either paving, filling in potholes, or some of the country roads. I wouldn't even mind having a little 1-year test or a 2-year test on if we took up the crumbled pavement, I'm thinking of one road in particular, and put down gravel and just see what happens with an unpaved road during all of our seasons and see if that makes any sense, rather than to continue to pave country roads that fall apart because of our topography. See what happens if we just go back to a great base of gravel that can be graded, scraped, filled in, and see how that works. Thank you.
James McNamara.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to thank FATV and FLAP for the invitation. I appreciate it. So let's just get to the real heart of the matter here. So as Mr. Zarella said, we have 180 miles of roads. If we assume that the lifetime of a road is 25 years, and it could be more, could be less, not much more than 30, then we need $7.2 million a year, every year, forever, in order to pave the roads in Fitchburg and keep them up to par. So, a proposal. I'm new to this, so I'm just going to throw some ideas out. Chapter 90 funds, $1.1 million. Let's assume that that's going to happen every year. Marijuana tax, $2.6 million. A small supplemental auto excise tax, $1.82 million. That's paying, each car pays an extra $1 per week. Gets you to that $1.82 million. There are 35,000 cars in the city. And in the city, whether it likes it or not, says it can't do it or can, it has to come up with some money besides Chapter 90 funds to pay for the roads. I'm proposing $1.6 million, which is 1.4% of the city's budget. That gets you to your $7.2 million. Right now, we pave 1 mile of road per year. That's 180 years to repave Fitchburg. That's not going to work. If we do 7 miles per year, then in 25 years, all the roads in the city will have been repaved. I think that's worth $1 a week. Now, what's the problem with my suggestion? The problem is the marijuana tax is 3% to the city. I'm proposing a ballot initiative to change the marijuana tax to 13% to the host community so that we can get that $2.6 million. The problem with Mr. Boschman's proposal for the supplemental excise tax is we also don't have the legal authority to do it, so that would be another ballot initiative. Thank you.
Beth Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier, and thank you to FATV. I would not be in favor of a tax increase or a debt exclusion. I would be in favor of neither because it puts a burden on residents. I think I would agree with increasing economic development to bring in more revenue. And I think we need to think about alternative ways to pave. There are some roads in Fitchburg that I think that we could do similarly to what they do in some surrounding towns. And it's a mill and fill where you take off the top couple of layers and then you regrind that and you put it back down and put a layer over the top. It's about a fifth of the cost of what it would take to pave a road, and it lasts about 10 to 15 years. The problem with what we have that towns like Lunenburg don't have are we have a lot of catch basins, a lot of manhole covers, and we have some deep potholes. You can't do a mill and fill on those roads. So it would be a matter of finding which roads we can do and focusing on those. The city has contributed more than $1 million per year to paving the roads. We have paved more than one road per year, and I believe it's about 7.5. If we did a mill and fill, and we could do, if it's a fifth of the cost, we could do, if you do the math, it's about 35 miles of road. And I think that it's not a solution, but it's contributing to a solution. Thank you.
Tom Hughes.
Thank you, Kevin. Why are we beating this dead horse? We talk about this same topic year after year, but we never discuss education. We never discuss the quality of life in our city. We never discuss the amount of kids that we have in our schools below the poverty line. If you want to increase tax revenue, then that's how you do it. You address education, right? These people, these young people, the ones that get educated are leaving. Why are they leaving? We need to get them to stay. We need to get them to reinvest back in the city, and we do that through education. Right now, we have 2 schools that are in trouble, right? And we need to be focusing on the schools. The potholes, I'm not telling you that we're going to ignore the pothole, but that's not the most pressing issue. The most pressing issue is we got to make sure our kids have a safe, thriving environment to get educated in, and when we invest in the education, we invest in them, we invest in our neighborhoods, we invest in our community, they stay, they become property owners, they shop downtown, and they pay taxes. That's how we increase our roads budget. Thank you.
Sally Cragen.
Thank you, and thank you, Kevin and Dave and FATV, for making this possible for our viewers to see what we all have to say about something that concerns everyone in the city. I would not be in favor of a property tax nor a debt exclusion override. We are not a community that could really sustain that campaign. I think it would be very divisive. I have been knocking doors since Memorial Day. I've talked to hundreds of voters, and voters have a wide range of responses when I say, would you have queries about Fitchburg? Those who are most concerned about the roads are some folks who are living out in the more countryish parts of Fitchburg. But there are also folks who have been very active on social media. And I think that social media needs to be put into this as a measure of people's dissatisfaction. I've talked to plenty of people who are living on roads that are, difficult, and they say, it doesn't bother me, I drive slowly. So there's a whole range of response, but to get back to the technical aspects of it, I spoke to a voter yesterday who asked about Fitchburg exploring other technologies, and by other technologies, I mean thinking differently about equipment like milling machines. And I love what Councilor Green and Ms. Walsh had to say about, taking a different look at some of the country roads. I was out on Sheldon. Some of the roads in our country areas, they're not even the regulation 18 feet. They're much more narrow, and they're tilted. And we have to remember that Fitchburg was built by farmers who had no problem moving water sources where it was more convenient, and then building a house where the brook had been. So the fire department has done a fantastic job on identifying where all our culverts are, working with DPW. But the exploration, the analysis has to continue. But I think looking into outsourcing possibly and bringing crews in that we're going to do some experimental road repair and see what happens.
Marcus DiNatale.
The question asked was not whether we favor a tax increase. Obviously, none of us do. The question is, do we support putting it before the voters? And I do support putting it before the voters. I'm ready to put this matter to bed and see what they have to say. Doesn't matter what I think personally about the tax increase. I'm against tax increases, but let the voters decide. I've driven these roads 24 years. I know they're in deplorable condition. It pains me every day to drive them, and I feel everybody's pain out there. It plagues my political existence. All these things you heard this evening aren't going to happen. 16 years on the council, 10 years on finance committee. I know this budget better than anybody. The budget this year grew by $2.5 million. Where was that growth? Things we can't touch. School spending, net school spending, state mandated. Employee benefits for retirees, contractual. General liability insurance by $400,000. MS4 stormwater, unfunded federal mandate, $400,000. Snow and ice, $600,000. And pension, $900,000. Health insurance, $1 million. So any talk of cutting the budget is fantasy. It's not going to happen. Any new revenues that we seem to conjure up, we did that with cannabis. $600,000. You know where that's now? Consumed by the general fund. Why? Because when you have a $2.5 million issue every year before the mayor sits down, that's where all the new revenue goes, to things that we cannot do away with. So this talk about new business, we've had over 60 new businesses in the city in the last 8 years. Our tax base has grown on commercial industrial by over 10%. Where's the money? It's going to those accounts I just mentioned. So people need to stop believing that this is willful negligence on the council or the mayor's part. We know these roads are terrible. We're doing our best, but new revenues are not going to solve the problem. All we can do is either a voter-approved tax increase, more state funding, or massive budgetary cuts.
Thank you. Jessica Jacobson.
Hi, yes, thank you for allowing me to be here. I would not be in favor of increase. Our per capita income is approximately $24,000 compared to the state average of $52,000, with a 14.6% of our residents living in poverty. As a penny-pinching homeschool mom, I know every penny counts, and I would check into all the grants that we seem to be approving and make sure that we're not approving anything that needs to be coming out of our general fund. Or very, limited in an extremely amount. And make sure we really check out the end costs of all our projects that we approve of. The city is going in a great direction, and I would look into additional sources from payments in lieu of taxes, because we do partner with a lot of organizations like Fitchburg State that don't pay taxes, and that might be something we could look into. And I also liked the ballot initiative that was previously mentioned by another candidate, so thank you.
Very good. We're going to open this up for 5 minutes for a general discussion. I'm opening up the floor. You don't have to raise your hand.
Go ahead.
Oh,
You go first.
thank you. I would like to just point out that no road in Fitchburg has ever lasted 30 years. There's no road in Fitchburg that's ever lasted 20 years based on our topography. And if this was to ever come to a ballot initiative, where it ended up on the ballot, I think that we would owe it to ourselves and the residents to educate the voters on what that meant when they would vote yes, that would mean that there would be a 5 or 10 year plus likelihood that their taxes would continue to increase, and not by 2.5%, more like 4.5% or 5%. Incrementally every year. And then let's not forget that when you do that, there's also a thing called maintenance. So when you repave a new road, pains me to say that in years past we've paved a new road and then all of a sudden there's a water main that breaks, and there we are digging it up again. We have stormwater, wastewater, and utilities, all that are being projected out on every road in the city that needs to be done, work that still needs to continue. So I'm not in favor of paving all these roads only to have to tear them up again. Thank you.
I'd like to jump in on that. I am working on a long-form journalism piece for the Sentinel and Enterprise about Fitchburg's preparedness in the light of climate change. So I had a very long tour with the fire chief and Captain Haverty, and I got to see all the culverts, and I got to see all the places that had the horrific flooding in July 16th. And what I saw was what I said earlier about farmers building, houses and fields wherever they wanted to. But we know where a lot of this is, and I would direct your attention to Haywood Street. Haywood Street is beautiful. Haywood Street has squares that they took out for utility work. Haywood Street has not been repaved because the water runs along the north side of it, and there's a culvert there, and then 700 or 1,200 feet down the road, we had Pine Street, and all of a sudden it was plate tectonics separating. You saw the giant road split apart. And what I see that we're doing now is that we are preserving roads by checking and doing all this prep work because we are our most vulnerable community, and we did qualify for all of that grant. So this is reassuring for voters. That's the only reason I'm saying it.
Everybody who's talking about milling and do some new stuff, we have civil engineers that are experienced people working for this city. They know how to do their jobs.
Yeah.
The city council is not going to effectuate change with how the DPW operates. Only the mayor can. And everybody's always telling we should be creative. These guys know what they're doing. It's nothing they haven't heard of. There's more to it than why don't we just do this? It was mentioned earlier, let's cut $1.6 million from the budget. I did not hear where that's coming from. I'd be very interested to know where $1.6 million is coming from, a 97% non-discretionary budget. I'd love to hear it.
Can I cut in?
I think that was directed at Mr. McNamara.
But it's a general statement, because everyone's always talking about cutting the budget, but they don't say where. I'd like to know where.
I mean, other than massive budget cuts, as you mentioned before, one of the things that I think that we could end up doing is the community coming together, and even if we all have to pitch in $1 out of our own pockets, like we'll have to do some sort of a guerrilla crew. Do you know what I mean?
Where are you
we all
cutting
come
the
in
budget?
together, pitch in together, and make individual
How did you get
patches as a
Unitil
community.
to pave?
You know,
That would be a...
if the council
That's
can't
what
provide the
that's what
money,
we're working
then
on.
we
Right.
come together
That's-
ourselves.
I think we should bring more attention to how Marcus got Unitil to pave
I
one of the
didn't
roads.
get them to pave it.
Oh.
That was
Well,
the
you posted it. I'm
administration
sorry.
with Unitil. I want to know where $1.6 million is coming from the budget. I'd love to see it. Tell
Unitil
me.
wrecks a lot of the roads, and I like
let's
seeing
Mr.
that.
McNamara
I'd love to see
respond.
it. I want to hear it.
Look, so I came here to present a proposal. I'm not saying it's the answer, but I've never heard any proposals here that it talks about how we're actually going to get the money. I don't know if we can squeeze 1.6 out of the budget, but we can squeeze something. And from what I can see, nothing goes to the roads because the mayor does not put it in his budget.
The mayor doesn't put it in his budget because he's got a $2.5 million problem before he sits down to look at it.
So I
That's why he doesn't
have
put it there.
the budget here, and I'd be happy to pass it down to anyone who wants to look at it. Trust me, we have all looked for places we can cut.
Everyone's acting
There's
like the mayor's
nothing.
sitting on a
Constituent
pot of
Wedgie provided a whole FPD to all of the councilors
And
over
they
the
were not
entire.
reasonable. They
I
were
still
not
haven't
reasonable.
heard where the money's coming from.
Okay, so
Haven't heard
let me finish what I was saying. So
We should check
take
out
away
how
the
Unitil
1.6
was
million.
doing that. We should
The
do
problem
more
is, if you're only
roads.
paving a mile a year or spending 1.1, it's never going to be fixed. The reason Fitchburg is not advancing as fast as it should is because the roads are holding back everything. Things are moving forward, but
they're
they're
not.
moving
Not
forward.
true.
You're-
Not true.
you're-
Dr.
disagree.
McNamara, have you looked at the latest assessor's report from 2 weeks ago? How our tax base has grown by 47% in 6 years?
Yes,
The
and
roads are not
You can
holding
cut all
business
the
growth back.
overtime pay.
We're not advancing as fast as we would be. Compare us to other cities.
We forget where we were 10 years ago.
You know why we're not advancing?
Okay.
You know why we're not advancing,
This city
Kevin?
was 10
Hold
years
on.
ago.
Stop, everybody. The 5 minutes is
We're
up
not
anyway.
advancing as fast.
Everybody, okay. Bring it back in. Housing costs have skyrocketed nationwide and in Fitchburg in the past few years. That, with Unitil, with food prices, with post-COVID inflation, a lot of people in Fitchburg are struggling. Last month, Attorney General Andrea Campbell certified a ballot question to be placed on the 2024 ballot, which would allow cities and towns to create a rent control board to enact regulations in the cost of rents. If this ballot initiative passes, will you as a city councilor vote in favor or against establishing a rent control board here in Fitchburg? If not, what would your ideas be to help make Fitchburg more affordable? Ms. Tozier Robert.
I think that sounds like a reasonable idea, some sort of board to monitor this housing situation. I mean, it is definitely a big crisis here in Fitchburg and across the continental U.S. And abroad. We definitely do need to build more housing, and that's just all housing, you know. The housing market, middle-class people who want to find housing, you know, there's problems with selling housing, but also the low-income housing, which is, you know, a big deal here. I know that they want to build a property on 80 Lunenburg Street. I know they want to build a housing complex somewhere on the corner of a Snow Street, around in that area. And in my opinion, it's like stuffing a chicken coop with the limited resources that are around, you know. So it's like, I mean, we're building and buildings. We're going to have this huge population living in this tiny area, you know what I mean, where the resources are already stretched. You know, there's already like no parking, for example. So what are we going to do now about parking in that area, unless you plan on building maybe a garage on a lower level or something like that. But I think a board is something reasonable to look into. Where housing is going to come from, how much, you know, it's going to cost, or things like that. Where we're going to get funds to start such projects. But again, yeah, that's what the board would be for. So I'm in favor.
Councilor Zarella.
I am absolutely opposed to rent control. I think it has been an abysmal failure everywhere it has been tried. I think it actually reduces available housing stock because it incentivizes renters to stay as long as they can in one place because they don't have to respond to the market anymore. And I also think it's frankly unjust to landlords to say, this is your property, but we're going to tell you how much you can charge for its use. Housing, as much as housing is a public concern, is not a public resource. It is owned by private owners, and we don't have the right to tell them that they must rent at a particular price because it's better for people who don't own the building. As for ideas on how to alleviate the housing shortage, we're already doing it. We do have massive new housing developments coming in. We do have reformed and relaxed zoning laws to incentivize and facilitate further development of housing, both traditional and non-traditional. And we are going to, I think, continue to do so. We're putting in market rate housing, affordable housing, artist preferred housing up the street. We are trying to capture some workforce housing down by the station to attract people who can no longer afford to live near their jobs in Boston. We're already doing it. It's not a solved problem, but it's a problem that is being solved as we go forward.
Councilor Green.
Yes, every day we hear and fight this crisis here in town, and I think that we've done well addressing with every housing development and every new business that's come in that's wanted to do either mixed use or housing. We've allowed them to use the tax credits that are available to them. We've incentivized them to offer, the three spectrums of housing to people in need. With that being said, I don't know if there's an easy solution for that. I want people to go to work every day and put in a good day's, worth of hard work. I want them to be able to have money to put back in this community. I want them to shop downtown. I want them to, buy local. We all benefit from that. I am not in favor of a rent-controlled board. I think that it's would be detrimental for us to put that stigma on some of our new developers that are looking, even as we speak, at properties that can be developed. And if they had to face that with rent control, they're just going to move down the road. So I would not be in favor of rent control.
Mr. McNamara.
I also would not be in favor of rent control. I personally think it's unconstitutional. It's a taking of private property to tell somebody how much they can charge for rent. And I think the evidence is pretty clear that anytime you do that in a neighborhood or community, the quality of that housing stock goes down. That's why you get more slumlords, more slums. And so the people are not actually better off with rent control because the place that they live in becomes worse. It deteriorates. So I would be opposed to any kind of a rent control board. In terms of what we do for increasing housing, there are lots of things going on. The governor is now proposing $200 million or whatever the number was to try and increase housing throughout the state. I think the state's the one that has to really step up for this because, frankly, that's where the money is.
Ms. Walsh.
Thank you. I also would not be in favor of a rent control board. I think that instead of trying to control the rents, what we need to do is increase the amount of housing that we have. Subsidized, affordable workforce and market housing. If we increase the subsidized, affordable and workforce housing, the number of units that we have available in those, I think that would be helpful. I think it would be unfair to landlords because if you have rent control, because their costs continue to rise. And again, I agree with the fact that when you do that, basically they leave. And we don't want that. It's unfair to the owners. Right now, we've got a couple of projects that have just been completed, Morin Square. The Ira Johnson mills have been purchased, and those are going to be converted into units. As a matter of fact, across the street, there are a couple of units. Up the street, there are more units. So all of these things are happening. What helps developers in towns like Fitchburg, gateway cities, are HDIP funds, and those are Housing Development Incentive Program funds. It gives tax credits to developers so that when they come in, they build housing units in gateway cities, and then because otherwise they would come in and they would invest, and the rent that they could charge would not cover their expenses. So those funds have just been increased at the state level, and I think that using those carefully and supporting people, developers to come in, and supporting those developers in their application for HDIP funds would help. Thank you.
Mr. Hughes.
Thank you. I would like everyone so far who've answered this question, have they spoken to people, everyday people who's paying high rents? Have you spoken to people that have to choose between food and paying rent? Have you actually spoken to them? No, you haven't, because if you did, you have some type of empathy toward this situation. We know a one-bedroom apartment and affordable doesn't actually mean affordable. Affordable based upon what type of salary an individual is making, right? A family of 3, a family of 4. So why are we so adamant about, no, I wouldn't advocate for this? But there has to be some type of oversight, because otherwise we're going to price ourselves right out. And those apartments that are going to be high priced are going to be empty, right? And they're going to end up lowering the rents anyway to get someone in there. So that maybe not rent control, but some type of oversight that needs to be in place, right? I don't know if it's landlord accountability or whatever it needs to be, but we need to think about the people who do not have these high-paying jobs, that don't have, they living on bare bones. They living below poverty. And you're asking someone that's living below poverty to pay $2,000 a month for a raggedy apartment in a building that's leaning, and you're talking about not having rent control? Give me a break. You have not been to these places. You have not been on the 3rd floor. You have not been on the 4th floor. You have not been in there and saw this old wallpaper on these buildings, and they're charging astronomical rates for these places. Something needs to be done. Maybe not a general board, but some type of oversight. Maybe exposing this. And people are charging money, and they live in Boston. They don't care about what the building looks like. Thank you.
Councilor Cragen.
Sure. I've actually enjoyed the benefits of rent control when I lived in Cambridge. And what I found as a young journalist was that it was a real help at that point in my career. But what I noticed was that the landlord was not particularly quick to fix things like hot water, broken windows, doors that didn't lock properly, etc. So I was able to start my career. It was great. But Cambridge is huge. It is an enormous city. It was able to accommodate a rent control system. And over time, the landlords finally hit a wall and was able and abolished it, at the end of the 90s. I also lived in a rent control bungalow in Los Angeles, California. That was exciting. Santa Monica was full on People's Republic. And as someone who was starting a career in television and film, I was very grateful to be in that apartment as well. But it was not a long-term, solution for me. I did know families that were living in rent control, and they were there for a long time. But I do not think this is the right solution for Fitchburg because of our housing stock. We have, 6,500 single-family homes, and then we have all these multiples of 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 and 7, apartments. And I don't see this as being the solution. What we have done is exactly what other folks have said. We altered our zoning downtown so developers can, be excited by these beautiful buildings because they don't have to provide 2 cars per unit. We're looking at people who are coming from further east, further south, sometimes further north. Fitchburg is really attractive right now. I'm meeting a lot of new voters, and I think it's exciting they want to be here, but I don't think rent control is the answer, much as I was grateful for my time with it.
Councilor DiNatale.
Opposed to rent control. This is a federal and state matter. The national trends right now, market rate forces dictate what's going on primarily, and we all know how inflation has creamed everyday workers. You see less in your paychecks, more costs going out of your pocket. Nothing the city council can do about that. And And as was stated earlier, we have projects in the pipeline that have already been completed that is bringing about an abundance of housing stock, and that's because of the market, because people want to come here. And why do people want to come here? I'm not saying everything is excellent for everybody. Obviously not. But I have to look at the totality of the city. When you have developers from outside putting money into the city, it's because this place is becoming more attractive and more affordable. And why do I say affordable? Per the latest assessor's report, if you go to 75% of the rest of the Commonwealth, our people will be paying a lot more in property taxes and a lot more in other expenses. There are communities that pay more in taxes than we do and don't get trash pickup. We have the second lowest property tax bill in Worcester County. We are an affordable place to live, and we have to be on the tax side because of Unitil killing us left and right. And there's nothing we can do about Unitil. That's another gem I hear every day from people aspiring to run the city. Let's get rid of Unitil. Unitil's not going anywhere unless they sell. They're not going to sell. So I know this upsets people, but I am here to educate the public. This isn't fun for me. I don't like people being misled. This is an affordable community to live in, as difficult as it may be for many people, but if you go anywhere else in the state, you're going to be guaranteed to pay more. And the evidence of that is all around us, all the people coming in. We had 31 new single-family homes built last year, 34 the year before that. This isn't a community that's regressing. It's a community that's progressing, and we need to keep going. Thank you.
Ms. Jacobson.
Yes, hi. I would highly suggest the council to invite the local landlord association to talk about how we can help the local landlords. You want to praise jobs like Lawrence Square, where, yes, those type of businesses that are coming in to buy these are great, but you got to call it what it is. You're not helping the local poor population that can't afford those. Unless you have Section 8 or RCAP, you can't afford those. The average citizen can't afford to live in those places. And those organizations are what are setting the bar up so high. They set it up for the rent to be that high. So if we want to include those and have way more of those, then our rent's going to just keep continuing to get higher. I used to work for many of the small landlords in this community, and personally, as I look around and I see the corporate real estate firms buying them up lot after lot, which, again, those are just killing the small landlords. It's so hard for small landlords to actually keep their apartments affordable here, and just to get work done is hard for the local landlords. And I hate hearing everybody say, like, that we just have a bad stigma on landlords, and it's not really fair because it's the large corporations that are buying up and raising the rents. So that seems to be a big misinformation about our housing issues, especially with a lot of the laws with the eviction process, that landlords' hands are tied most of the time. I know landlords that can't even renovate apartments. After that, they've lost their shirt. They have vacant apartments for years because they can't even afford to renovate them. I really would suggest reaching out to the local landlord association on these issues.
Mr. Strausdus.
Thank you. I do not believe a board on rent control is necessary at this point. In Fitchburg, we have many properties that can be reimagined as residential properties with the right permitting process in place. We should be looking to drive down rent costs by expanding our inventory of housing. Renovating buildings to increase inventory will also bring in more foot traffic and generate more taxes for our city. Fitchburg currently is actually a pretty affordable place to live comparatively. More residential properties, more residential opportunities will help to keep these prices low, and that is the goal. The answer to this problem is to let business-minded people work to develop these buildings by streamlining the permitting process. And once again, Unitil is the third most popular thing I hear at every single door. So I know that the problem with Unitil is not one that we can solve immediately or at all, but trying to keep everything as low as possible would help to offset that burden, from my opinion. Thank you.
Opening the floor up, 5 minutes on the discussion.
I'd like to commend Jessica for mentioning the Landlords Association in Fitchburg. That is a dynamic group. I have friends there. I have learned a lot. I worked with a resident who had a scofflaw tenant who didn't pay rent for 15 months and worked the system to the disadvantage of this very hard-working business owner in Fitchburg. And that was the absolute worst side of things. The best side of things was the conversations I heard the landlords having and the way that they shared resources and they shared information about legalities and contracts and so forth. So the Landlords Association, they meet every month. Brenda Covino-Watson is the contact person. If you're watching and you own a building and want to rent out, that's a great group to get involved with.
Okay,
I think this sounds good.
I just want to remind you, you don't have to raise your hand. Be assertive. If you want to jump in the conversation, jump in the conversation.
This really sounds good, and it's a pie in the sky. But Fitchburg is affordable as it relates to Worcester and Boston, right? What about the people here in Fitchburg? We're not even considering the people here. We're not considering the household medium income. Can they actually afford this? You know what I mean? Can they actually afford this? And we're talking about all the new developments going. That's all well and good. But what's the average rent that those places are charging? Mm-hmm. You know why? They don't get the call because me as a pastor get the call. First, last security, $6,000. Are you kidding me? I can't even afford. What do you mean? How am I going to do that?
Councilor Hughes, we have resources available. We have 4 facilities.
But those resources are going to be, resources are going to be depleted.
We have 4 facilities that their rent is based on income. Right here in town, we have 4 facilities.
But who's telling? We're not talking about existing.
Those income-based programs are what's causing everything to go up.
We're not talking about existing.
How exactly do we want to get? How do we get people to spend the massive amount of money to build new housing if we're then going to tell them that they can only charge much less than they need to recoup their
I know landlords that were looking for assistance, and there's no assistance from the city for them to help. All these small landlords, they can't get any assistance unless they are right on Main Street.
Have we forgotten about,
you look into the grants,
and
you can renovate an apartment for $5,000, but you can only get that grant as a landlord if you are right on Main Street.
So what they do is they throw out the tenants that they do have so they can raise
and then it's the corporations that buy up all these buildings, and that's what's raising the rent. It's the corporations and the LLCs.
That's actually something that we have addressed.
Boston's going to move out here.
People from Boston
and Worcester's going to move out here and take care of our problem.
Once again, this is the common theme in every election. I hear all the complaining. I don't hear any solutions.
And we actually have implemented a solution to one of the problems that was raised, namely the out-of-town landlords who don't care about the property,
who don't care about the
community. We have implemented a vacant property registry.
Okay,
the largest,
not vacant property, occupied property. Not vacant. We don't care about vacant. We're talking about occupied.
We're trying to get the vacant properties reoccupied.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the landlords who care nothing about
Board of Health
top dollar for these dilapidated buildings and apartments that ceilings are falling down.
Board of Health. Board of Health.
Don't answer.
Because that's
don't answer that.
And call me.
Board of Health.
Listen, I'm telling everyday people. I'm telling you, everyday people.
Tom, you would know you were a counselor.
I know that.
They didn't ignore you.
I'm talking about everyday people.
Then tell these people who you're speaking to come to you then, or come to one of us.
Because they don't feel like when they get there, they're going to get the results that they're looking for.
We have to know about it. It has to be reported.
They didn't try contacting any one of us. No one's ever said to somebody, go bother somebody else.
Very active in this.
We can force landlords to have their properties up to code, but we can't force them to have a particular standard of income. It's their property, not ours.
Ladies and gentlemen, all of these developments that we're talking about goes back to what I said earlier about state and federal issues. The federal government gives us housing assistance with strict stipulations. These new developers that put money into the city, they do so under strict federal and state stipulations. What they can't charge,
I'm going to talk about
they can charge. So if you want them to lower their prices, get the government out of it.
Let's not ignore
yes,
that.
I know the lady that Sally Cragen was talking about.
Exactly.
If you're going to build buildings up to code, you have to charge the appropriate rents. More inventory drives rent down. If you have more inventory, the cost of rent goes down because they get competitive. That is your solution.
But we shouldn't overlook the national economy.
When you're making local landlords pay $20,000 so that they have to have 2 parking spots per unit, How can small landlords can't afford
If the
that?
market's allowing all this
Yes,
investment.
we
This
fixed
is no.
that.
This is city of Fitchburg.
We fixed that
This is our-
recently.
Your rules you're implying on the
They don't
small
need
landlords.
two
Okay, the
They can't fix it.
5 minutes are up on that. Okay, 5 minutes are up.
They are. The zoning
Moving on,
board
moving
was.
on to the next question. How do you, okay. You're running for city council, not school committee, but you're in a position of advocacy on the city council. Where do you see the state of education in Fitchburg? Where do we excel? Where do we need improvement, and what will you do to advocate for education in Fitchburg? Councilor Zarella.
There is really only one major area in which the city council intersects with the school committee. So I'm going to sit here right now. I'm going to tell you, I don't have stats on all the schools in my head because it's not something that comes in front of me, and I can't be an expert on everything. But what I will say is, in the one area where we do intersect with the schools on the city council, namely capital improvements and repairs, every incumbent sitting here has been very, very much in favor of everything our schools need in terms of capital improvements. Everything else, in terms of educational policy, in terms of truancy, in terms of educational outcomes, we don't control that. And honestly, given how much we do need to absorb in this job, we can't become experts on that as well, even from an advocacy standpoint. Some of us are former school committee members and do have an advantage there, and that's great. But for most of us, trying to take that on, trying to become well-versed in education policy while keeping track of all other things in the city, it's not feasible. Something slips through the cracks. And so I trust our school committee members to make good policy in that regard. And here on the council, I say, what do you need? I talked to the superintendent just this morning, actually, and I'm going to be talking to him again tomorrow. I say, what do you need? If you need anything from the council, if there's anything we can do for you, tell us. I'm 100% behind you. That's what I do, and that's what I'm going to keep doing.
Councilor Green.
Yes, again, to point out that 51% of our fiscal budget is automatically given forth to the school department, which on a $4,000 property tax bill is $2,429 right off the top, goes to schools that we can't touch. Where I would like to see maybe innovative ideas is where we have peer groups in the schools, or where we actually incentivize parents as paras in the actual classrooms. I do think that there is, we have to be honest that we have probably close to 47 or 48% of our students coming in that English is not their first language, and I think who better to teach and prepare students to use English as a language and be fluent in it is to have them be taught by the parents. So I would love to get behind an idea where we actually incentivize parents to serve in the classrooms as paras and have a mutual conversation with our school department and our school committee on how we best educate our students so that not only do they want to live, work, and play here in this community, but feel valued as a member of this community.
Mr. McNamara.
So I'll admit that I don't know a lot about the school system. My wife, Tricia Kennedy, was a teacher in town for 35 years, and she tells me that she would not want to be teaching these days. And I think the reason is that the behavior of students has changed, right? The way you can deal with them. And I think one of the fundamental problems in any school system now is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So do students want to learn? Are the parents wanting their children to learn? So Mr. Zarella mentioned the high truancy rate. So why is that? That's because parents aren't sending their kids to school. So I don't know how you solve that problem. If it's a situation at home and the parents don't make you go to school, don't make you pay attention at school, don't make you do your homework, I don't know how we solve that problem.
Ms. Walsh.
Thank you, Kevin. When I was on the school committee, and I voted consistently when I was on the school committee to support MSBA funding for projects, for repair projects, and for capital projects. We have a school committee for that purpose, to look at all of those issues, and they do a fantastic job. There are 7 members of the school committee, and I think that the school committee has a better sense of what is needed in the schools than the city council, although I think that it could be that the city council and the school committee could work together more frequently to see if there are issues that the city council is unaware of that the school committee knows about and could educate the city council better. Having said that, I think that there's a certain there's net school spending that the city has to meet that's mandated. We have no choice, and we have met that for at least the last 8 years that I'm aware of. So I think that I would be an advocate for continuing to meet that, and I think in some cases we've actually exceeded net school spending. If the funding is available, I don't have a problem with that, but money these days is pretty tight, so I don't know that that's going to happen. Thank you.
Mr. Hughes.
Our local education, local students, children here is our most important asset. Our most important thing that we should be really, really looking to, not just say, hey, they got a school committee, that's their problem. No, as city council members, I think we ought to be actively involved in the schools, meeting with the teachers, talking to parents about the situations in the school, because there are things that are happening and taking place in our schools that we, as members of the city council, you can't say, well, I didn't know about that. I didn't know about this. We have to be intentional about getting involved. And when we get involved on every level that we can, even recruiting teachers right now, the school department is down probably 30 staff members. You know what I mean? So they're trying to make ends meet, pulling from here, pulling from there. So we need to become active recruiters, not just for our city, but for our schools as well. Because remember now, we need to put motivated people in front of our kids, because this is our greatest investment. And we want these young people to grow up and be productive members of society, so they won't do like Mr. McNamara just said, whatever the term they use, they're out of control or they're bad or whatever. So if we invest into them, give them the resources that they need, and another thing, bring back community-based organizations where there was a connection between the schools and the community. When we had community-based organizations where the kids could go, and if the kids had problems, then the school could contact the person at the CBO, right, that had a relationship with the parents. I think the relationship between the schools and the community has broken down. So we need to kind of bridge that gap back and make it stronger. Thank you. Councilor
Cragen.
Thank you. I continue to attend school committee meetings. Pastor Hughes has seen my smiling face on more than one occasion. I spent 14 years on the Fitchburg School Committee, and I really loved every meeting and every minute and all the projects. And with that, I would direct anyone to go check out the 2023 accountability data on DESE, Department of Education and Secondary Ed. Our non-high school students have done well after COVID, despite what one might think, what rumor may say, but the data says that's improved. Okay? The same with our science achievements non-high school. We've met target. We've exceeded target. This is most of the kids. This is the low income and so forth. This is exciting news. And when this kind of information comes out, I share it on social media to try to get people talking about this good news. And I agree with Pastor Hughes in terms of the community-based organizations. That is absolutely essential. The Boys and Girls Club of Fitchburg-Leominster do not accept every child that could possibly want to go there. Again, moving to Leominster was a hardship for a lot of families. Now it's like almost 10 years later, so people have accustomed. But I know from walking around knocking doors, there are a lot of kids that are just loose. They're kind of on the streets, Mechanic Street, Elm Street, and Elm Street Community Church, shout out to them because they continue their after-school program. They do a fantastic job. The bottom line is our students will in all likelihood, stay here, start a business here. Mr. Derek, it's like the multiple generations have to run these businesses. It works. So that's my piece on this, and I will speak during the 5.
Councilor Di Natale.
Legislatively, there's nothing we can do about the schools. It's solely a school committee function. That's not passing the buck. That's not punting the issue. They are in charge of the schools. We are not. All we have to do as councilors is ensure that they meet the net school spending funding requirement, which we have done, and supply any tax dollars to the school system when they need infrastructure, major infrastructure repairs. And what would that entail? In the last 8 years, we've done the following. Abating asbestos in the basement of Long Show, audio-video upgrades to FHS Auditorium, installing wheelchair lifts at Rheingold, Long Show roof replacement, paying off part of the Long Show roof replacement project, replace the water piping at South Street, replace the water main piping in the basement of Long Show, replacing the Memorial School auditorium seating and South Street retaining wall, upgrading video capability in the FHS auditorium, window and door replacements at Long Show that were just going on, $1.4 million, not including the MSB money that we go after aggressively. Then next year, the boiler systems are getting replaced. And now, of course, we have the new Crocker School. Collectively, this city has invested over $8 million in 8 years out of free cash to the schools, the second highest amount to any department in the city. Every single time the school department has asked this council for funding, asked the mayor for funding, they've gotten it without hesitation. So what I will continue to do as a councilor, if reelected, is not even hesitate to fund those major school building capital needs, because that's like the roads. It's over $220 million for all the school needs. Crocker alone is costing $76 million, of which 45 is coming from the city through a debt loan for 20 years. I would argue our school system is a shining light in this city, and I'm not wearing rose-colored glasses. I'm thankful where we are. Would you like to be next door in the land of utopia, Leominster, where they do everything right? Did you see their school system a few years ago, what they went through? Teachers are coming here from there. That's just a fact. So anything they need, we provide it, and we will continue to provide it.
Ms. Jacobson.
Hi. So I'm a homeschool mom. I don't have kids in the public school, but I do have to agree with Councilor Di Natale. From what I've seen, and I've seen a lot of complaints, people have reached out to me for homeschool options, and I couldn't help them. So I've heard a lot of stories about what was going on in the public schools. I have attended a lot of the school meetings, the school policy meetings, and as far as the city council, I feel like they are doing the best they can to support the school committee. It's the school committee's job to listen to the parents. So hopefully the new re-elected school committee will do great at that. And again, continuing the partnership with the school committee and the city council would be important so that they can get all the funding that they need.
Good. Mr. Strausdis.
If elected, I will choose to be an advocate for any and all improvements on our school system. Our educators are a huge part of our community. My grandmother served in this very school system for decades as the librarian, which many of you probably had her.
Oh, wow.
We have to understand that our youth is our future. These children are responsible for the future of Fitchburg, and they are the voters of tomorrow, so we have to educate them appropriately. Supporting our school committee in any way that we can will be something that I will consider a priority if I'm so lucky to be elected. Thank you.
Ms. Dozier Robbins.
Well, I mean, listening to Di Natale tell it, I guess the council's job really isn't so much as the educational aspect of what's going on in our schools as more as it is to financing repairs and things of that nature. But as a community, like one of the things that I had recommended or proposed was like a youth center that would have supplemental education for adults and children aside from our schools. If you look at our city, like obviously what's the biggest obvious problem where education is needed? There's a huge population in our city, I think as somebody has already mentioned, that can't even speak English. So that would be a good start, is to try to get as much as our population in the city of Fitchburg to be as fluent in English as possible. But it's like we're asking students and we're asking the people of Fitchburg, what is it that they need to know? What is it that they need to learn? They're not going to know what it is that they don't know. as a person that's traveled this country, like, I mean, I've been in multiple school systems throughout this country, including international baccalaureate, magnet, tag, all kinds of upper level schooling. When I came to Fitchburg, it was actually unaccredited, Fitchburg High was, and that was back when it was the old Fitchburg High, when the library and the computer room was just one room, and literally the library was just a bookshelf. You know, those students didn't know that that's just not. So I think with education itself being an individual expression, it's, you know, how far an individual person is willing to go to educate themselves. Here we are in the age of information. But even aside from that, we can still reach out. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've always been an advocate for, is reaching out to the community, to the public, and educating them in things that I think that, or as government, that I think that they should know. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a half hour left in this debate with 10 candidates having 3-minute closing statements. My public school math tells me that we need to get to that. So we started the questions on this side. We'll finish up starting on this side. Ms. Jacobson, your 3-minute closing statement.
Hi, my name is Jessica Jacobson, and I'm running for City Council. I'm running because, like a lot of you, I want to see my children grow up safe in a prosperous and healthy community. I want them to live in a society that respects their rights and to offer them opportunity. Today, I see that future being threatened. As our economic situation deteriorates, civil respect and cooperation are also deteriorating. As a City Council member, I would work to ensure that every resident's voice would be heard at meetings, regardless of the religious belief, sexuality, or skin tone, and that the City Committee would comply with all open meeting and viewpoint discrimination laws. Hate emails, stonewalling, belittling, and intimidation tactics should not be tolerated by any government committee. However, I have personally experienced this, and talking to people, I have heard that many more stories like mine are being practiced by various committees. If elected, you can count on me to do everything I can do to promote transparency, fairness, and ethical standards on all of our committees. I will push to enact ethical review board to monitor all the committees and elected officials. As of now, there is no process where a civilian can file a complaint against an elected official or committee with any actual follow-through. This needs to change. Fitchburg is becoming more economically depressed. Our per capita income is approximately $24,000 compared to a state average of $52,000, with 14.6% of our residents living in poverty. We are carrying the tax liens of $3.4 million worth of property in the city, and we have foreclosed on $2.3 million worth of the properties. I used to work with many small landlords in the community, and I personally feel the economic squeeze is forcing them to sell. As I look around, I see large corporate real estate firms buying up a lot. And if this continues, we will no longer be residents of a city, we will be renters of a huge corporation. These type of environments invite criminals, drug dealers, and users, as well as state housing and welfare agencies who will exploit our situation and serve their ends, not ours. If they succeed, they will ruin the community. And a good example of this fate is Lawrence, Mass. Drug addiction has taken a terrible toll on our city. Homelessness and mental illness continue to grow at an alarming rate. The city has not made our homeless and mental health facilities a priority, as shown by the closing of our father's house. I will work with Fitchburg Police and our mental health programs and housing agencies to see that the drug issues are addressed and that those who have been victimized by it will receive the care and treatment that they need. As residents of Fitchburg, we all have a stake in the success of this community. We must all work together to make it a better future for this community, and the only way that can happen is if we respect each other's constitutional rights. We must move forward together united, and we must have faith in ourselves in this great city. Things can change for the better, but we have to work hard at it. I would appreciate your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor DiNatale.
Marcus DiNatale. I've served on the City Council for 16 years. I'm the most senior member of the City Council. I was here during the Great Recession of 2008 through 2013. I experienced what happens to a city when you shut your streetlights off, when you gut public safety and public works and schools, cut library funding, cut recreation. I never want to go back to those times. As chair of the Finance Committee for the last 10 years, I hold a breadth of knowledge on our city's finances that is unmatched by anyone. And that experience grounds me in the practicality of our situations. We need calm, cool people at the helm during times of trouble to steer the city in the right direction. This city 15, even 10 years ago, was very weak. Even with our blemishes and our challenges, this city is in the strongest financial and economic position in over 30 years. It is undeniable. The roads, ladies and gentlemen, I understand you're angry. I'm angry. I'm sick of seeing these roads the way they look. My own kids, 4 and 7, make fun of me every time we drive down Electric Ave, and they go, just to upset me because the roads are so bumpy. It is not lost on me. And it's not lost on anyone in office. We're as frustrated as you are. We are doing our best. But it is a very difficult problem to overcome. It is not because of willful negligence, no matter how much you want to believe that. It simply isn't. My pledge to you folks is simple. Straight talk, hard truths. It's why I'm not popular on social media, and I wear it with a badge of honor. I tell people how it is. I don't look for your votes by telling you false hope, telling you I'm going to do this or that, putting a moniker on my lawn sign saying fix the roads with no plan to fix it, telling you that I have a plan, which is a plan that already exists to fix it. That's smokescreen. You want answers, and I give you the answers, even if you don't like it, because I have respect for your intelligence, and I don't care if you vote for me or not. I'm not doing this for popularity to elevate myself. I'm here to do a job, and one of my primary jobs as a counselor has and continues to be educating you folks as best I can. You don't have to like what I say. You don't have to like what's being said. I want you to understand it, because I don't like most of it. So please vote for me on November 7th or during the early voting periods on October 28th or October 30th through November 3rd for Marcus DiNatale, Councilor at Large. I'll be second on the ballot. You know what you're going to get from me at this point. I don't hold anything back. I'm not here for popularity. I'm not here for prestige. I take this very seriously. And part of that seriousness is making sure you're well informed, whether it makes me popular or not. Thank you.
Councilor Cragen.
Thank you. My name is Sally Cragen, and I am running for re-election to the Fitchburg School Committee. I am humbly asking for one of the 5 votes that you may cast for City Council at Large. I enjoyed the 14 years we worked on the school committee because we were able to repair buildings, to improve curriculum, to support special ed, to reinstate the high school musical, and to do all manner of projects that really enrich students' lives. I am very much involved with the schools to this day as the director of Be Positive Therapy Pets. We currently have 5 therapy pet teams. We were at Rheingold on Monday. The total number of hours that were donated were 7.5. We're looking to be doing 30 hours of pet therapy at Rheingold. This is just one of the things I do. I love City Council. I really find the work rewarding. I love talking to residents. I like finding answers. I am a journalist. Before I was elected to the school committee, I wrote for the Boston Globe. I learned very high standards as a journalist, and I can talk to you off the record or on the record. And I've heard from all of you. And I have heard from regular voters how much they love Fitchburg and how glad they are to see the new businesses coming in and how beautiful the city is in the fall, to be honest with you. We are a remarkable city, and this is a creative city, and we have a history here, and I'm hoping that Councilor Green will talk about the Historical Society a little bit, because we both work there. She's the president. And our Fitchburg Historical Society is the repository of how things were done. And guess what? We're doing the same thing now. We have innovators here. We have people working in high-tech here. We have new industries here. This is all part of the sequence of progression that made Fitchburg a destination for every single ethnic group that emigrated starting in the 1840s. That is remarkable. Boston, New York, Fitchburg, we're along the same lines in terms of having brilliant people come here, meet someone, and then start something and make it happen. The entrepreneurialism I see in Fitchburg is thoroughly inspiring. I would like to say I live in West Fitchburg with my husband Chuck and my children, Jet and Christopher, and I'm just looking for one vote. I'd love to come down your street, so give me a buzz at 978-320-1335. An enormous thanks to FATV. We just hosted Armenian visitors, officials from Armenia, the country of Armenia. I showed them FATV. We visited with Nate. It was an amazing experience. To have FATV, to see these meetings, we're lucky. Thank you, and good night.
Mr. Hughes.
Thank you. My name is Thomas Hughes. For the past 30 years, I pride myself as being an advocate for students and parents in the city of Fitchburg. I ask you for your vote tonight on November 7th. I ask you that you will make a conscious decision about making sure that you have someone that's going to advocate for you and not be afraid to ask the tough questions, not be afraid to bring the tough questions to the table, not be afraid to go into City Hall and go to the mayor's office and advocate for you. That's what I've done over the years, and that's what I will continue to do, whether I'm elected or not. I'm not here to be anyone's friend. We have problems. We have real problems. We have real issues. And you need someone that's going to advocate for you, speak up for you, and tell you the truth. We talked earlier about the roads. The road situation is not going to go away. It's not an easy fix. So I'm not going to tell you a lie just to get your votes. There's not a magic wand that can be waved to address the roads issues. But I am going to tell you we need to keep up with making sure that we continue to invest into our public education system. Another thing I'm going to promise you an open line of communication. I'm going to promise you if you call me, I will respond. I'm going to promise you if you ask me to come to your house or to your neighborhood to discuss an issue, I'm going to promise you I will come and I will hear you out. And if it's something that I can bring to my colleagues on the city council, I promise you that I will do. I promise you, if you have an issue that pertains to a specific ward, I will work with that ward councilor, and I promise you, together, we will do the very best we can to make sure your issue is resolved. So many, many years, we worked in this city of Fitchburg. I remember doing street cleaning down on North Street, when we'd pick up needles by the bagfuls, doing street cleanups, working with a number of people, even on this existing council right now, and many members of this community. So I ask you, let's continue to work together. Let's continue to bind ourselves together and support each other, and so we can make sure that we make Fitchburg the best city in the Commonwealth, and make sure that we provide the best opportunities that we can, not just for people coming in, but also for our existing members of this community. Thank you, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Ms. Walsh.
Thank you. My name is Beth Walsh, and I'm asking for your vote for Councilor at Large because I know that my education, experience, and work in the Fitchburg community have given me the necessary qualifications for the position of Councilor at Large. I'm a former prosecuting and defense attorney. My doctorate is in criminal justice, and I retired as an associate professor of criminal justice in 2018 from Fitchburg State University after 20-plus years of teaching. I have worked in constituent services for 10 cities and towns in the Worcester-Middlesex district since January of 2022, so I know how to serve the constituents in Fitchburg. I served on the Fitchburg School Committee from 2013 to 2017, and I served 2 terms as the Ward 6 City Councilor from January 2018 to December 2021. As City Councilors, we don't have the luxury of focusing on one issue. Knocking on your doors has confirmed to me that we must deal with a myriad of issues that come before us: economic development, housing and homelessness, the budget, zoning, planning, and yes, the roads, among others. As councilors, we need to work together to support proposals that are in Fitchburg's best interests, yet be confident enough to vote against those proposals that are not. The roads are a major concern for city residents. In my prior work as the Ward 6 City Councilor, I voted in favor of road improvement every single time it came up, and I will continue to do so if elected. We need to continue to support increased funding for road improvement. Having an extensive plan is one thing, but locating the money to fund the plan is something else altogether. We may have to be creative to find funds and consider ways to pave roads more economically if that's possible. Fitchburg is on the cusp of a resurgence. We must continue to expand economic and community development because bringing in more business will raise revenue, which can help relieve the tax burden on residents. We also must continue to support public safety in our community. Firefighters and police officers keep our community safe. I am very excited to think of all that is happening in Fitchburg, and I am more excited about how much more we can achieve. I know I can make a significant contribution to help to build a better Fitchburg as Councilor at Large, and I ask you to vote for Beth Walsh, Councilor at Large, on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McNamara.
Hi, I'm Jim McNamara. I'm a candidate for Councilor at Large. I'm a retired PhD-level scientist and business executive. Back in the 1970s, the EPA came to Fitchburg and said, we'd like you to separate your sanitary sewers from the storm drains, and we're going to pay 80%. Fitchburg said, no thanks, we got it covered. So they came back 30, 40 years later and said, hey, remember us? We still want you to do that, but now we're not going to pay anything, okay? Now we have the unfunded mandate that Marcus DiNatale has mentioned in the past. If you look at 5 years ago when they paved Mount Elam, it cost $300,000 for a mile. With the money that was spent on City Hall, that would have paved 75 miles of roads at that price. I think the current administration and some of the council are making the wrong decisions. I do believe, contrary to what some other people have said, that the condition of the roads is holding the city back. I think we would be moving much more quickly if we would at least start addressing it. Now, I do have some proposals for where we could find some additional funding. I take Mr. DiNatale's point that there's not a lot of room in our budget, but there are other places to get resources. We need to be writing grants constantly. The federal government passed a $1 trillion infrastructure bill. How are we looking for that? And I understand the council may have their hands tied, but that means we need a new administration to try and move things forward. So if you are happy with the roads and they're okay and you'd like all the other things that we're doing, by all means vote for somebody else but me, because I don't really want to come here every day and bang my head against the wall. But if, like me, you feel like, as a taxpayer, the roads are the biggest problem in the city, it's what prevents people from coming here. We're a laughing stock when you mention you're from Fitchburg. We have a big Great Wolf Lodge that won't even say they're located in Fitchburg. They say they're in central Massachusetts. So if you want somebody who's going to focus on finding new sources of revenue, no matter how difficult that is, then vote for me, because that is the main driver that motivates me to run for city council. So I ask you for your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Green.
Yes, hi there. My name is Amy Green, presently a city councilor. I have enjoyed almost all of my time on city council for the past 10 years. I continue to advocate within the definition of a city councilor to promote our 01420 community. I welcome residents to reach out to me if I can be of service or help. We have made strides to address the issues that plague all of us every day. I am not everyone's shot of whiskey or ray of sunshine, but I do know how to do my job and do it well, and will continue to do so as long as you will have me to represent you. I am committed to be a voice of reason. It is important to recall our history, sometimes not always positive, but learning how to maybe do it differently or better. I have been a self-employed business owner for the past 27 years in this community, and I am proud to refer to Fitchburg as my hometown. I am willing to give money to this community every opportunity I can to continue to invest in this community. That's how much I believe in this community. I am asking for you, the residents, to not give up on us. We are in a great position to make good things happen here, and I am seeking re-election as a city councilor on November 7th.
Thank you. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. I'm Anthony Zarella, City Council President for the last 3 years and Councilor for 6. Tonight, as I sit in this chamber, I look out on Main Street. It's a little dark now, but, I can picture it. And I'm reflecting on how far we've come. When I first joined this council, City Hall was a derelict. The business of the city was conducted out of a cubicle farm in a hastily converted factory. Main Street was a one-lane bottleneck that was supposed to encourage pedestrian traffic, but really didn't. And we had numerous outdated laws and policies that were discouraging investment and economic growth. Now, don't get me wrong, we were already on the upswing from our low point. But I couldn't help but think of the stories I grew up hearing from my Norno. I've got another of his ties on today, actually. Stories of when City Hall was a proud nexus of civic affairs, when Main Street was two-way and vibrant, when Fitchburg was a thriving hub of business and industry. Well, I know you're still watching, Norno, and look where we are now. A revitalized City Hall that welcomes all our citizens. A two-way Main Street with a panoply of restaurants and cultural attractions. A drastically reformed city code that is far more business and development friendly. And well over $100 million of non-municipal investments in our downtown. I sit here weekly to try to guide and shape this city, but only because it shaped me first. And through my family and their stories and memories, it was shaping me before I was even born. This city is in my blood and in my bone, and I never tire of working to make it better. To honor the memory of my grandparents, to make my parents proud, to give my daughter and nieces a great place to grow up, and to carry the Fitchburg Renaissance forward. So please, on November 7th, cast one of your 5 at-large votes for Anthony Zarella. But as always, even if you don't plan to vote for me, please go vote. And if you or anyone you know needs a mail-in application or a ride to the polls, please call 978-343-4426, and we will get you there. And just so you know, that is not my cell phone. My cell phone's on the city website. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Ms. Tosia Robbins.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's been a part of this team in this campaign and who has gotten us this far. I'm very grateful and very appreciative of everybody. Everyone claims that they want change, but change doesn't happen by electing the same people back into office. Local Bazooka, Lollapalooza, and other festivals will be some of the things that I would bring back to Fitchburg. Who do I represent? The population that Hughes had mentioned earlier that has to choose each month between rent or food with a fixed income. Yes, I've been in the criminal justice system, and I know what problems that we have with our incarceration prevention, after services, and detainment. The opioid crisis is huge in our city, and something I noticed that wasn't addressed much tonight. But I am in favor of testing out medical facilities in our city. Other than experiencing homelessness and being in jail, though, I do hold 2 associate degrees, 1 bachelor's, and I'm currently working on my 2nd bachelor's in political science. Together, we can make Fitchburg great again by stop spending, cutting the budget, and investing in things and resources that we already have, as well as the potentials of the people in our city that we already have. Thank you, and remember, it's not me you're electing into office, it's us.
Thank you. Mr. Strasdas.
First, I want to thank Kevin, Alex, Robin, Nathan for making this happen, and FATV. It's greatly appreciated, and you guys are an asset. I want to state that I'm grateful to be able to spend this time here with you guys tonight, and with you, Fitchburg. I would like to take this time to invite you into my campaign and the work that I'm doing. I sit before you with cracks in my fingers and burns on my wrist as I aim to speak to the common Fitchburgian or Fitchburg resident. I have served you for the past decades and stand before you looking at to see how else I can help. Our city council is supposed to be a reflection of our city. This evening, I've been given the pleasure to answer many questions for you. Given the format of this program, I was only able to address a few of the topics that I wish to touch upon. As I have said before, businesses new and old are the key to the future success of this great city. We need a councilor that can communicate with local businesses, one that has been in their shoes. Opening a business in Fitchburg should not be a bumpy road with potholes and detours. Please check out my campaign spotlight video on fatv.org or my Facebook campaign page. You can contact me anytime by Facebook Messenger, or my telephone number is on my page. My goal is to be approachable and responsive. I'm not taking donations for this campaign, and I'm not asking for any endorsements. I do not plan on going into this position owing anybody anything. On November 7th, I'm counting on your vote. A vote for me is a vote for getting back to business. A vote for me is a vote for a councilor that vows to work with whoever is elected this November 7th. I would like to wish everybody in this room the best of luck, and I want to say thank you, Fitchburg, for having me.
Thank you. And that concludes this debate with the candidates for Councilor at Large in the city of Fitchburg. I know I say it a lot after every debate, but it takes guts to show up to a debate. It only takes 50 signatures to get on the ballot, but it takes guts to show up. We have 10 candidates that qualified for the ballot, and every single one of those candidates came here tonight to answer questions and to face each other. And for that, you all deserve our thanks and our gratitude for stepping up, running for office, and showing up at the debates to answer the questions. Now the decision lies with the voters of Fitchburg. Early voting begins on October 28th at City Hall, and then on November 7th, if you so choose, you vote at your local polling precinct. You may vote for up to 5 candidates out of this group. You can vote for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Not more than 5, though, or else the whole ballot is gone. So you can vote for up to 5 candidates. Please rewatch this debate once, twice, as many times as it takes. Visit their websites, their Facebook pages, or give them a call and talk to them. They'll be responsive and answer your questions. Thank you all for joining. Bye-bye.